Hi everyone, today we're doing lesson 1 on square roots. We're going to learn how to calculate square roots, type the symbol into our calculator, as well as leave square roots in our answer for exact answers. So let's get started with our notes. I'm starting in the week of 5/11/2020 folder. Today we're doing lesson 1, so I'm clicking on the Monday folder. Access your lesson through this assignment right here. Today we're doing lesson 1 on square roots. Your learning target is I can describe what it means to take the square root of a number and solve linear equations with square roots. We have seen square roots before, but what does a square root mean? A square root is the inverse operation of squaring a number. So inverse, remember, that means opposite operation. So the inverse of adding is subtracting, the inverse of multiplying is dividing, the inverse of squaring a number is square rooting a number. It is a number when multiplied by itself gives you the original number. It says, what does the symbol look like? So we're going to insert an equation here. Go up to insert, equation. And when we insert a square root symbol, it's going to be under this operator, and it looks like this. So that's what our symbol looks like. I'm just going to write the square root of x so that you can see something underneath the square root. To type the square root in your calculator, so if you have a calculator like the ones we use in class, that's the TI 30x2s, you are going to press second x squared, and that's how you get your square root function on that calculator. If you're going to use the calculator on your Chromebook, there's a Chrome extension already installed on your Chromebook for a scientific calculator. So if you were going to use the square root symbol, you would use this button right here. However, you need to type in your number first. So if I was trying to find the square root of 4, I would type in 4 and then the square root symbol, and then that gives you the square root of 4, which is 2. If you are using the TI-84 extension, or that's actually an app on your Chromebook, to get the square root, you are also going to press second x squared on this calculator, and that gives you your square root symbol. So whatever method you want to use, it doesn't matter as long as you can get it somehow. So what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate the expressions below using your calculator. If your answer is a decimal, round to the nearest tenth. So that's 1 decimal place. I'm going to do the first one with you, the square root of 121. I'm going to use the scientific calculator extension on my Chromebook. So the square root of 121, I type in 121 first for this calculator, and then I type square root, I get 11. What that means is that 11 times 11 is 121. In other words, that means 11 squared gives me 121. I want you to try 2 through 4 on your own. If you get a decimal, round to the nearest tenth. Go ahead and check your work with my work. Now, one thing I want to mention is the square root of 150 is 12.2 rounded. But if you notice in your calculator, it went on forever. And if you press second PRB to see if it turned into a fraction, it cannot. So just keep in mind, these are not exact answers. The 12.2 and the 3.2, they are rounded answers because that's what the directions told us to do. Okay, so moving into the next section here, it says sometimes instead of rounding, we have to leave our answers exact. So what that means is that we actually leave the square root in our answer. So when we go to solve equations, which is the next part of our notes, if they ask for an exact answer, or if they don't say anything about rounding and you're not sure what to do, that means they're looking for an exact answer. The only time they are not is if they tell you to round. So we're going to solve some equations with square roots. So these are the same steps as solving other equations. Our first step is to make sure each side of the equation is simplified. So combine like terms, distribute if you need to. A second step is to get your x's on one side of the equation, constants on the other by doing the opposite operation. This is when you draw your line down the equal sign and move things. And step 3 is to leave your answer as a square root if your answer is irrational. because irrational numbers go on forever. They don't have a pattern, so we have to use that square root symbol to show the exact answer. So look through this example with me. We've got x squared plus 10 equals 84. Normally, if we were in class and working on paper, I would tell you to draw your line down the equal sign. And we want to get x by itself. So our first step is to subtract 10 from both sides. We get x squared equals 74. Now, remember, we are doing the opposite or the inverse operation here. So the x squared is not by itself. We need to get rid of the squared. So to do the opposite operation of squaring a number is to take the square root of a number. So that would cancel out. So that means my square root right here is canceling out with my squared. Okay, that looks really ugly. But so my square root is gone and my squared is gone. So that means I'm left with just plain old x. And then the square root of 74. If you type that into your calculator, we get 8.602325267. I'm just going to press second PRB, see if that's irrational, and it definitely is. So I can't simplify that. And the directions nowhere told me to round. So I'm just going to leave my answer as the square root of 74. Okay, let's take a look at the next two, and then I'll have you do the last two on your own. So it says solve the following equations, keep your answers exact, meaning keep a square root in your answer. So here we have x squared equals 56. So I'm going to just copy and paste, Control C, Control V to paste into my workspace. There's nothing to combine on either side of these equations. And I just have an x squared. I just need to get that by itself. So what I need to do is to get rid of that squared is I need to take the square root of both sides. And sometimes this doesn't like to work with me here. And that means my square root and my squared cancel out. So I'm just left with x equals. Now let's check in our calculator to see if the square root of 56 is going to come out nice. It does not. So to leave our answer exact, we have to leave it as the square root of 56. Now, if the direction said to round to the nearest tenth, it would be 7.5. But the direction said nothing about that. They wanted exact answers, so we leave it as x equals the square root of 56. All right, let's take a look at number 6. I'm going to copy and paste. Okay, we would normally draw our line down that equal sign. Nothing to combine or distribute on either side of these equal signs. So my first step is always to take care of what's being added or subtracted. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And I'm left with x squared equals, and 32 minus 5 is 27. Now I just have that x squared left. So to get rid of that x squared, I have to take the square root. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. Check in your calculator if 27 is going to come out nice. By the way, if it comes out nice, that means it's called a perfect square. But it doesn't, so we're going to keep it as the square root of 27. All right, I'm going to have you pause the video and do 7 and 8 on your own. Okay, go ahead and check your work with my work. Number 7 was a little tricky. You had to subtract 4 from both sides. And I know you can't see this too well, but I'll make it a little bit bigger for you. But we are left with a negative n squared, okay? That negative n squared, a lot of us would miss because we think that minus is with the 4 instead of the n, okay? If you forgot about that, hopefully you would have noticed that you got negative 74 on this side. And if you try to take a square root of a negative number, it doesn't work in your calculator. It actually comes up as an error. So hopefully you knew something was wrong if that happened. And number 8, there was one extra step in here. We had to divide by 10. We should get x equals the square root of 39. And that's it for lesson 1. Make sure you self-assess for today's lesson and let me know if you have any questions.